Today, we're going to learn about simple interest. Simple interest is probably not something that you're used to hearing about, but I think you'll understand more when we get through. Make sure you have these notes, put your name at the top, and don't forget our objective today is that you can solve simple interest problems. So interest is money paid regularly at a specific rate when borrowing or lending money. So for example, when I buy a car, I'm going to borrow the money. I don't have enough cash right up front to pay for the car. So when I borrow the money, I have to pay a little extra back as a fee for borrowing the money. So if I go to the bank and I borrow money, the bank is going to charge me a certain percent of what I borrow so that they can make money too. That's how banks make money. Likewise, if I put my money in the bank may pay me a little bit of interest for letting me keep the money in there so that they can use it to lend to someone else. It's how it works. So this is the amount of money borrowed or lent to another person. I want you to remember every time we talk about this for today or in the future, it's always called principal. So if I borrow $20,000 for a new car, that's my principal. The rate is the percent charged for borrowing or made by lending. For example, if you put money in the bank, maybe I earn 3% interest. That means every year the bank is going to give me 3% of the money I have in the bank, kind of as a reward for keeping it with them. Time is the number of years. It's always in years, so remember that. Sometimes if we talk about months, we might get a fraction of a year. That's required to pay back the loan. So I want you to notice this. This is always going to be very important. Interest is, remember what is means? Equals. So we're going to call interest I. Oops, let me make this better. Is equals the principal, P, times the rate, times the time. I par T. I'm going to scroll down. Make sure you have this. So let's try a problem. Suppose you deposit $400 in a savings account. Do you remember what the word is for that money? Yeah, it's the P, the principal. So let's put a P up above it. You keep it in the savings account for 6 years. Do you know which part of the equation that is? It's time. Put the T there. The annual interest rate is 5%. Okay. If you do not deposit or withdraw any money, how much interest will you earn on your savings account? So simple interest, as a reminder, is I equals P times R times T. Don't forget you must change the percent to a decimal or fraction. The percent is only there so you know what it's out of, but when we actually use the number, you need to change it to a number out of 100. So let's abbreviate here. I equals, remember, P times R times T. Now you can use the multiplication dot, or you can just write the letters next to each other. In this case, we are looking for the interest. We know the principal is $400. We know the rate is 5%. Now I have to use 5% as a decimal or a fraction. In this case, I'll write it as a fraction so you can see it's 5 out of 100. And I'm borrowing this for 6 years. Now on your calculators, go ahead and multiply those three numbers together. Let's see, 400 times 5 times 6 equals, now I'm going to divide by 100. That's one way to do this. You should get $120. So that means after 6 years of having my money sit there in the bank, I'm going to earn this money. So just to give you an idea, I started with $400. The bank paid me $120 just to borrow the money or to keep it in their bank. So that means my account now has $520 in it. Now the question didn't ask that. It asked how much interest will you earn? So this is your answer, but I just wanted to show you this part. whoops, let me scroll down. You want to go on vacation this summer, and you decide to borrow $500 to go on a trip. Sounds like a good plan. You're going to go to Funland. You go to the bank and borrow money at 11% for 2 years. Find the interest you'll pay on the loan. So don't forget, we're going to write I equals P R T. I, we don't know I, we're looking for I. The principal is the amount borrowed. It's $500. The rate is 11%. This time I'm going to change it to a decimal, 0.11. Hope you can read that. And it's for 2 years. Please remember this says 0.11, 0.11. Sorry, my handwriting is tough there. Okay, use your calculators. And don't forget, here, let me write it in another way. This also means 11 out of what? Yes, it's a percent. It's out of 100. Okay, use your calculator. So we have 500 times 0.11 times 2. You should have to pay $110. So just keep this in mind. That means you borrowed $500 to go on a trip. You're going to have to pay an additional $110 because you borrowed the money. So how much will you have to pay the bank back at the end of the 2 years? Well, you borrowed $500, so you certainly have to pay that back. Plus, you have to pay the interest back, which is another $110. That makes a total of $610. That's a lot of money for a trip. Okay, I'm going to pause this. Make sure you have this. This problem is slightly different. This time, we don't know the interest rate, so we're going to have to try to really think about this. Casey deposits $1,500 into savings accounts. Okay, wait a second. That's the principal no matter what. After 5 years, okay, that's the time. Her account is worth $1,725. Now, wait a minute. That didn't tell us the interest, and we are looking for the rate. Well, so how could we find the interest? Well, let's see. Now her account is worth $1,725. What was it worth when she put it in there? Yes, $1,500. So if we find the difference, that should tell us how much interest she earned. And then we can find the percent. Okay, so that's the interest. So let's start with our formula again. I equals P R T. Every time you see the word interest, you're going to start with this equation. By the way, it's not that much different than what we've been working with. It's just that now we know specifically what everything stands for. So in this case, oh, I started to write here. I shouldn't have. Remember, we know the interest in this case. It's $225. So let's start with that. $225 equals the principal we know. It's $1,500. We do not know the rate, so let's call it R. And we know the time is 5 years. Anytime we have an equation, we simplify everything that we can before we start doing the opposites. So the very first thing I think you should do is multiply 1,500 times 5. So do that with your calculators right now, please. 1,500 times 5. Oops, 1,500 times 5. So you should get 7,500 or 7,500. And that's being multiplied by the rate. Now remember, we have to get R by itself to solve, so in order to do that, we're going to do the opposite. This means multiplication. The opposite then is, you got it, division. So divide both sides by 7,500. Take your calculator for me right now. Divide 225 by 7,500. I got 0.03. So that must be the answer, right? No, because they want to know what the rate is. This means 3/100ths, which means this. And what percent is 3/100ths? You've got it. 3%. That's the interest rate. right, I'm going to pause the video, and I think I've run out of time anyway, so I hope you have all of this. I will see you later.